Well, good morning. Welcome to, this is week 4, James, asking and receiving. This is the week I will probably teach you nothing. You're welcome. But we're going to talk about what it says. So we'll at least familiarize ourselves a bit more with what is in James in this asking, receiving session. Here it is. And I'll talk about some metaphors, some things I noticed about some metaphors that were fun. And then if we have any time, we can discuss some of the insanity that I'm about to say. So, all right. So this, like I said, is the third case study. It's the last time James specifically references asking and receiving, asking for something from the Lord and receiving it or not. And so we're going to look at it and poke at the ideas in it and see what it can tell us about holiness or what holiness does or what it is or whatever. Okay. So last week I mentioned that asking and receiving is impossible to remove that from your emotions. You can't really talk about it without talking about some feelings. Last week we talked about anger a decent amount. But this week, this question and answer discussion is probably even more emotionally charged than that, because it's talking about healing. And you don't ask for healing usually unless you need it. And if you need it, that means you or someone you love is in a bad spot. And that's an emotional experience. You're going to feel things about it. Okay. So our episode of Asking and Receiving is in chapter 5. It's verses 13 through 16. It says, "Is anyone among you in trouble? Let them pray. Is anyone happy? Let them sing songs of praise. Is anyone among you sick? Let them call the elders of the church to pray over them and anoint them with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer offered in faith will make the sick person well. The Lord will raise them up. If they have sinned, they will be forgiven." Okay, great. Okay. So I would love to just tell you that this means that the next time you're sick or the next time someone you love is sick, you bring them on in, we'll get some elders, we'll pray, bappity bap, problem solved, healed, done, the end, right? Is that what this says? It happens sometimes. Correct, it does indeed. So how do we deal with that? How are we supposed to emotionally process, one, the request? How are we supposed to deal with the fact that this may or may not? And two, how are we supposed to deal with the answer? So, can we have them? Hold on, Mike's coming.
One simple way to deal with it is to just blame the elders.
Blame the elders.
I mean, it says that prayer of a righteous man, and though I've been nominated and elected to be elder of this congregation, I don't consider myself a righteous man. I don't think that my prayers have any more influence with God than yours or any person on the street or anywhere. So you just blame the elders. It's real simple.
There we go. You're welcome. Class is over. No, I'm just kidding. But that is a good point. And okay, so say, I know this says elders, and if we're looking for a spell, we should probably follow it exactly to get what we want. But this is not how it happens in day-to-day life nowadays. Nowadays, it is real weird in our traditions, the one I grew up in, to see someone call the elders together and ask for the oil and the praying. And that's weird. We've done it here. It's happened. How often? Every year? No. Every 5 years? No. It's weird is what I'm saying. And by weird, I don't mean wrong. I mean abnormal. It's against our grain. It's weird. Oh, Lawrence says, Zoomers, for what it's worth, he carries a vial of oil in his car. Because we are given this exact instruction and told to do this. This is an instruction. So we have more thoughts to go over to help us kind of wrap our head around this. So let's do that for a minute. So the obvious question that I think we're kind of broaching with ourselves and together is, does this mean actual healing or the churchy-worchy kind of healing that I can't prove, I don't have to show you is real, I can just talk about? Which kind is it talking about? Is it talking about both? Does it teach me about either one? Is there a priority, one over the other, that I'm supposed to have? How does this work? All right. So let's determine actual healing as given the relief specifically asked for. That's what we mean, right? When we say actual healing, we mean you, the elders came, they anointed, and you said, Lord, please heal my pneumonia. And then he did. Actual healing. That's going to be our definition. Okay. Fun thought. James 2. Stay with me here. I'm going to muddle up some thoughts and then hopefully we'll unmuddle them. But I think I'm muddling them the way our brains naturally do. So it's important to muddle them and then unmuddle them so we can do it in real life. Okay. James 2:14 says, "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save him?" Okay, just that thought. Get rid of all of the rest of James. Just that thought. If someone says, "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save him?" That implies very heavily that faith is meant to save you, right? Faith has a responsibility. It saves. And if it's not real faith, it ain't doing that. Okay. All right. Processing this. Okay. So I have 3 parents. I have a stepdad. He's technically my real dad. I have a horrible dad who several times through growing up at one point or another would say, "I love you." And I would say, "Fat lot of good it does me." Because love also is supposed to do something. It can be called true or false love based on what it's doing. So when he says, "I love you," and I'm like, I'm right. He behaved that out and he earned it. Fine. Okay. All right. So if our faith has a responsibility to save us or to at least produce certain things, then does God's holiness, does God's faith mean he has a responsibility to save us? Does it work the same? Does it work the same for him? If being holy means, if a holy person will have a faith that saves, and God is holy, can I therefore draw the other side of that conclusion that God's faith must save or it isn't real faith? I say yes. And I'm not afraid yet. That's fine. Okay, keep going. I said yes. I just blamed God. I assigned him a responsibility to save. And then I'm going to ask for healing and I might not get it. What does that mean? How do I hold that together? What does that work? How does that work? Okay. And then the next thought I had about his responsibility to save, because that seems very like I shouldn't be telling him what his job is, right? That's above my pay grade. But that's because his responsibility is different, I think. In what way? Excellent question. Our responsibility is responsive. Something happened and we have the responsibility to respond to it. His responsibility didn't begin until he decided he wanted to do something. And then because he wants it, and him being the only one able to do it, that blends together in something like responsibility for God. But I think it's different for us. Everybody just gave me deep thinking faces, so I'm going to sit here for a minute. There's a danger here. Yes, everywhere. Give him the mic.
If faith is real, there will be evidence of it. And that we should, in any way, expect to hold God accountable is sacrilege.
Well, what if he tells me he's going to do something and that he always does what he says, and then I have to determine whether it's him or not acting?
That's your problem, not his.
That is my problem. But I think he helps us with this. I think he tells us who he is on purpose. That's what testing the spirits is. And that's why I say his responsibility is different than ours. Our responsibility for us is something you must do or you die. His is a choice. I think what makes it a responsibility is his desire. And therefore, it's not actually like a responsibility. That's not probably the right word for him.
It's a judgment.
It's a judgment.
He is the only one who can tell whether my faith is real. I can fake it, and my brother here on the couch might think that it's real when it's not. But I can't fool God. That doesn't work.
Very good. I agree. We cannot fool God. So does he have a responsibility the same way we do? No, I do not think so. But that doesn't change the fact that we have that responsibility because something did happen and we have to respond to it somehow, for or against, right? Okay.
Jen?
Yeah.
Said another way, I think, which may be more palatable to those of us in previous generations. We can count on God to be God. And so if he doesn't act according to the way we think he should be acting, it's probably because our perspective is off.
Well, and it's kind of like, too, if we can use parents as a metaphor for God to teach us some things about how he works with us, I can choose to commit something to my kid, but now I'm responsible for it if I commit to it, if I make that choice. If I tell my children, I'm going to come to have lunch with you at school today, and then I don't, and I do that their whole life, I have failed. They do not love me. They do not know how to love. They do not know what it is. So of course we can count on God to be God. And therefore, because he's decided to commit to something, now he's responsible for it. That is, yeah, that's good. That's what I mean by his responsibility, is because he decided, communicated, and committed. Can Gerald have the mic?
Everybody's familiar with the saying, talk is cheap. And I think that's what we're dealing with here. We may have skipped over the first part of verse 14 a little too quickly. It says, if a man claims to have faith, it's not whether he has faith or whether it's strong or weak or whatever, but he claims to have faith.
Where? What are you reading? Is that in 5, or is that what I read in 2:14?
2:14. Anyway, it's as if a farmer prays for a bumper crop this year to help pay the mortgage on the farm and the new tractor he has, but he doesn't go out and plant a single seed. Whose fault is that?
Exactly. And if yeah, exactly.
It's not. Yeah, it's certainly not.
Yeah, God's fault.
You understand that we have a responsibility to have the faith, not just claim that we have the faith, but a responsibility to have the faith, and then God provides the increase.
Yes. I think James agrees with everything you've said beautifully, but that's what I'm doing on purpose. I'm trying to get you to think like James, and I'm poking at it. So well done, guys. Okay. So if faith has a responsibility to lead to things, it will. Real faith leads to things. God has kind of a weird version of it that means we can count on him. That's all I really know about it. And it's because he wants us to be able to count on him, and he's decided that we can. Okay, great. But on some level, that means I have a responsive responsibility, and he needs to be able to count on me if this is mutual. All right. Okay, I'm stuck. What does that mean? I don't know. That's a great thought. Okay, let's follow the trials. I know that I have decided to look at James through the reference of asking and receiving. And I think that's good. I think it's useful. It's helpful. But I'm pretty sure James wrote James through the lens of trials. They're all the way through. So let's talk about the trials for a second. We have already seen in week 2 and week 3 that there are at least 2 types of trials. The first case study, there is a type of trial that when you receive it, you're supposed to experience it, see it as joy, because it is bringing about patience to finish its work so that you may be perfect and complete, not lacking anything, right? That was the first kind. Okay. The second case study, we learned that there's a kind of trial that is born from your inner desires battling within you, selfish ambition, right? So there's at least 2, maybe more, but in James, at least 2. So if there's a kind that makes me perfect, and there's a kind that's bad. If I'm in a kind that will make me perfect, and I ask for healing, will he give it to me? Logic seems to dictate no. Why would he do that? If I'm making a piece of jewelry and I get raw gold, I have to refine it. I have to put it in the heat and clean it and make it perfect so I can use it. And if the gold says, please don't do this to me, I'm gonna be like, trust me, shut up. Just, this is what we're doing. I'm gonna turn you into beautiful jewelry. That is us. So if we're in that first kind, why would we think he would save us from it when he's saving us through it? Okay, so I've already cleared up the fact that sometimes I might get the healing I ask for and sometimes I might not. And if I don't, I already have a reason built in. That means God is good and I can count on him. Cool. All right, so ultimate healing, being made is, we're going to define that as being made holy by the blood of Christ and living with him forever. Anybody have a problem with that definition? Gary needs the mic.
I do not have a problem with that definition yet, but
Okay.
Give me some time. But anyway, I was actually wanting to respond to the previous topic, but I couldn't get the mic in time.
Okay.
You moved on. So anyway,
Good job, Coraline.
one of the things we need, I think, to do, especially when you're reading James, it works with anything else. In fact, Lawrence and I were talking about it a while ago. You and I were talking about it a while ago. Forget chapter 5, forget chapter 4. Read the book. Mm-hmm. Okay? It does tend to break itself into sections, but that's still artificial. Chapter 5 follows a very interesting idea that James presents. It's one of the only times in the New Testament that it's actually verbalized, but it's very pointed throughout the teachings of Jesus. If it's God's will, certain things will occur. If it's against his will, now you're looking at chance, random chance about what's going to happen.
Right.
I think this is something we need to talk about when we talk about healing or any other magical spell that we think the book says do this and you'll get that.
Yeah, I call that spiritual. You're right if you're right.
Yeah, and going to what I think what's important about one of the things that's important about this text is that demonstrating faith is saying, I think God can heal if he wills to heal, and I'm going to call people that I trust to help me with that process. Now that's the Reinhardt 21st century version, but I believe that's what it's saying in very clear language.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we're going to get there. I think you're way ahead of me. Slow your roll.
Chapter 5 doesn't just start with this idea.
No. Yeah, all the way through, which is why we're going back to 1 to trace the trials.
Thank you.
Okay. So if an actual healing would prevent the completion I need, so God won't spare me from it, does that mean that the priority of the 2 types of healing is ultimate? Yes. Right, that makes sense. Okay, so James 1:12 says what I already said, but I'm going to show you that James says it too. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. The word proved, is that one's under who has stood the test, or once they have been proved, some versions say that word means there, you look up the word used there that James wrote down, whatever language that was. I don't look that up. Anyway, it gives definitions, and the first one was to accept, like meaning you passed it, like I accept your work, you passed the test. And the second one, which I think fits James 1:12 beautifully, is the definition is tried as metals by fire and thus purified. So in James 1:12 it says, blessed is he who has been tried as metals by fire and thus purified, for once he has been purified, he will receive the crown of life that goes to those who love, that goes to those who God loves, or whatever. So that's just that. Of course there are trials that he won't save us from, because we're only right if we're right. And what do I mean by that? I'm right if the thing I wanted to do was God's plan, because there are things that are morally reprehensible God will never do, but then there's a whole swathe of choices, like who are you going to marry? That's not morally wrong. Like maybe don't marry Hitler, that might be morally wrong. But other than that, there's no, you know what I mean? You're only right. Is that the person you're supposed to marry that God wants you to marry? Well, you're right if you're right. And you're wrong if you're wrong. There's really no like way to no magic spell to know that and see the future. There's just that's all in Christian life, and it's also in the healings. But one of the reasons we don't get what we ask for sometimes is because the thing we're asking to be saved from is something we need to be saved through, not from. Anyway, okay. So right before the healing bit in James 5, we're reminded of Job's example. Hooray! Why would he use that example if we weren't going to hear things that sounded like no? Or things that sounded like not yet? Or things that sounded like yes, but when we ask for things sometimes. Job, ugh, yuck. I hate that example. Let's see. As an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who have spoken the name of the Lord. As you know, we count as blessed. Who? Those who have persevered. What's the main guy? What's the Hall of Fame guy? Job. Oh, gross. You know what I don't like to read when I read the Bible? You need to be like Job, Jen. Jen doesn't want to be like Job. That sounds hard. But Jen also doesn't want to look at Job's story and see that the Lord is full of compassion and mercy. Now I have an offshoot, very interesting to me thought on that little bit that if we have time at the end, we're going to go back to. And if I say I'm done and I don't say it, say like, what were you going to say about Job? Unless we run out of time. Okay. Don't have time for that can of worms. So when we don't like the answer, we should remember that ultimate healing is worth suffering for. I think that's one of the things Job's story teaches us. I think he suffers a whole bunch, but it's worth it in the end. I think that's what we find. So
I'd like to point out that if God healed every illness that I have when I ask for it, I would never get to heaven.
Right. You would never be perfect and complete. Exactly. That's why he does it. Because if he's saving you through something, he won't save you from the same thing he's saving you through. Does that make sense? If a surgery is going to save your life and your mommy, who loves you, saves you from the surgery, she has killed you. And this is true of the Lord with our trials also. All right. So chapter 5, 7 through 11 says, okay, we already did that. I already read it to you. Cool. All right. So patience. We need this. That's like in chapter 1. Let patience finish his work. James has been talking to us about trials and patience this whole time. There's a kind that must finish its work. Awesome. Okay. Ready? It says, be patient then, brothers and sisters, until, when does our patience end? The coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rain. You too be patient and stand firm because the Lord's coming is near. Okay, fun. Metaphors. In this metaphor of the farmer, so I'm supposed to be waiting patiently for the God's coming. So that sounds like it said, hey, the priority of healings here is ultimate. While you're dealing with everything other than ultimate healing, you're doing it patiently, waiting for the ultimate healing, because that's end goal. Okay, got you. Metaphor, no problem. See how the farmer waits. He's waiting. What are we waiting for? Coming of the Lord. That's where my brain went. So when I read waits patiently for the autumn and spring rain, I equated that with the coming of the Lord. But I think that's wrong. Let me say it this way. Be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the coming of the Lord, because that's our ultimate goal. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the thing that will bring about the crop coming up, waiting for the circumstances that allow the crops to grow. You know why? Those are our trials. You know what brings out about our perfection? The first kind of trials. So really what this says, I think, is see how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, or wait until the Lord comes. See how the farmer waits for his land to yield his valuable crop, patiently waiting for the trials that will bring this about. Is that what that tells us to do? To patiently wait for trials while we're patiently waiting for the thing that the trials will get us to? Ugh, gross. Not a big fan of that. Okay. just so you know. I did find another weird metaphor thingy that I think I read wrong for a good long time. I'm gonna go ahead and share you about it while we're talking about metaphors. In chapter 1, he starts the book, obviously, and he says, I'm James. There's some hard things. Don't worry about it. You actually need those hard things. They are going to bring you to a place where you can be saved to completion, where you lack nothing. And then he starts talking about rich people and poor people. And all throughout the rest of James, he's not very nice to the rich people. He's pretty much pointing out that they're bad. In our second question and answer in chapter 4, he does it. In chapter 5, he's going to do it again. And so when I read it, and I knew that before I read James the first time. I grew up in the church. I knew that he talked about that, and he was mad at rich people. So when I read this first description of rich people, I put his anger in it, but I was wrong. Let me show you. Fun. I enjoyed this. Okay. So he says there's trials. You're going to need them. They'll make you perfect. Ask for the thing you need to get the trials. God's going to give it to you. I promise. Believers in humble circumstances. So he just said you need trials to become perfect and complete. And instead of being mad at rich people, now he's going to tell 2 types of people where they can find some trials that will make them complete and perfect. Believers in humble circumstances. You guys can look for your trials in the humble circumstances. Go ahead. But that's where you're going to get your glory and your perfection from. So you go ahead and you just enjoy that. Rich people. They don't have trials. Poor rich people. How are they going to get perfect and complete? Oh, no, don't worry about it. James is talking to you too. The rich, where should you find your trials? Take pride in your humiliation. You are going to have trials. You have things now, I promise. Yes, but they will be taken from you. You do still have the beautiful gift of trials to make you perfect and complete, even if you're rich. There's no emotional charge in this session. Like, he doesn't accuse them of anything. He doesn't say, you're being bad. He says, hey, poor people, this is where your trials are. Hey, rich people, this is where your trials are. I just think that's fascinating. I thought he was mad at him the whole time. Okay, anyway. But he's not in the beginning. He's just telling him, hey, if you're rich, all of this is nothing. Remember that. Remember, your trial is the lie these riches tell you. You are being lied to every day. You're in danger, and it's the riches. And that's good news because you need trials anyway. I just thought that was fun. Okay. All right. But that's why we need patience, and that's why we need to be like Job. Hurrah. So I can only assume that we don't get what we ask for sometimes because what we ask for goes against what is best for us. It isn't God's will, which is why that's why he doesn't say yes to that. And if he wants to save us, he's the only one who can. And because he wants to, therefore it's his responsibility. And yet when I don't get what I ask for, it hurts. So if that happens, I should look for wisdom to help me deal with it. Wisdom will help me remember how it can be true that God is doing what is best for me and those I love, even though it doesn't seem that way. And through this, I will develop patience, and patience will work towards making me whole and complete, lacking in nothing, which is why it is God's plan that it happened. But look, in James 5. So I didn't print that one out. Like last week, I made a cute little summary of a section of the scripture and just like, this is this. I did that for all of chapter 5, but I forgot to print it out. And I wanted to do that. Okay. But anyway, so it says, hey, rich people, y'all are screwing up, and not in the like looking for your, he's mad at rich people here in chapter 5. They're doing some things they shouldn't. They have fatted themselves in the day of slaughter. Love that line. You have fattened yourselves in the day of slaughter because they were deceived. They deceived themselves and behaved wrongly and blah, blah. Okay. So be patient then because the Lord is coming, ultimate healing. We know he does this. Look at Job. So, you don't know what's going on. Just trust God. So just say yes and no and do that. Don't be promising the future for everyone. And then for this section, that's my summary for the first part of chapter 5. And then as soon as it hits 13, my summary was, and in the meantime, while you're waiting on your ultimate healing, talk to God about everything. That's how I summarized it. And I was like, wait, what if that's what it means? What if it means that while we go through our life, we're supposed to talk to God. Remember how we're going to need wisdom? The first one, wisdom. We're going to have to ask for wisdom all the time. Second, how every time we feel angry, every time there's no automatic answer to it. We're going to have to analyze it every time. Is it my anger? Is it God's anger? Is this anger correct? Is this anger right? Is this anger wrong? Do I die to this anger? What do I do? Every single choice we make is, remember, intimate with God so that we can reproduce with him. I think that's what James is saying. You're going to have these trials. Some of them you have to go through. Some of them he's going to save you from because you don't have to go through them now. But no matter what you're going through, is anyone in trouble? Pray. Is anyone happy? Talk to God. Are you sick? Let's go see which one of these it is and we'll deal with it. No matter what's going on with you, you have to be doing it with the Lord, with God. And also, hey, your brothers and sisters, they're here to help you. And if one of them messes up too, or gets lost too, or stops seeing the truth too, if you can bring him back, you will cover over a multitude of sins and save him from death. And that's what God has done for us. That's what he will do. That's what we're counting on. And yeah, there are trials now that he's doing that through. And that is unfortunate, but it's true. It's just true. And that's one of the things that's the reason I think James cares so much about the truth, about being deceived or not deceived, because in the garden, that's what caused everything, a lie. He'd lied to them about who God was and what he was doing and what he was doing for and to them, and they believed it. And that's why James tells us that God has chosen to give us birth through the word of truth to be a kind of first fruits of all he created. We are the first people, not us Christians, are the first people who after the fall live as though reality is what it actually is. As though God is who he is. He built what he built. He did what he did. He will do what he says. And that is what being holy is. Living as if real reality is real, not a lie. And while we're doing it, everything that happens, talk to God about it. Because he might be able to get out of that trouble. Or he might teach you through the trouble. But if he's not there, he can't do either. And he might heal you from the sickness, or he might hold you through the sickness. But if he's not there, he can't do either. So live your life with the Lord all the time. And if you're in trouble, pray. And if you need healing, ask for it. And whether you get it or not, he loves you and he's saving you. And you have to behave as though that's true. I'm pointing at Gerald, but he's not there because he said this too. You have to behave as though that's true. Because it is, because that's what it means to be born through the word of truth as a kind of first fruits of all he created. Otherwise, you're not. Otherwise, you're just self-deceived. Otherwise, your religion is worthless. Okay. As I've said before, that's true and it does explain it. I can look at reality and I can see the structures built in that allow for God to say no and still make him good. I see it, but it doesn't feel good. But there is something the whole time that has made me feel better about it. I don't know why it makes me feel better. I just know that it makes me feel better. And I know what makes me feel better is that God hears no so much more than we do. Almost everything he asks me, I don't do it. I do not live as I was born through the word of truth as a kind of first fruits of all he created. All the time. I don't, and I should, because it's true. So what does he do when I say no? And what does he ask? And why does he ask it? And why does it matter? And that's what we're going to talk about next week. And that's going to get us pretty much every piece of James we haven't already looked at. He's going to tell you about your money and how holiness behaves with it. He's going to tell you about the worst one of all. The worst one of all. I can't read this without bursting into flames, hypocrisy style, because he cares about your words. He cares a lot about your words. Lots about your words. He says, if any of you considers himself religious but does not keep a tight rein on his tongue, he deceives himself and his religion is worthless. I don't want that kind, but I do not keep a tight rein on my tongue. So anyway, we're going to learn about that a little bit next week. Are there any comments or questions or challenges or concerns or comforting thoughts or anything at all anyone would like to share? Michelle has something.
So this is in the context of the story about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And I remember this years ago. We did a Beth Moore study on the book of Daniel, and she used this example of them being in the furnace, in the fiery furnace. And so she says there are three ways that God saves us. God saves us from the fire, removes us. God saves us in the fire, and God saves us by the fire. Now, for me, in my frame of mind, because where I spend my days with people who are sick and praying for healing, and sometimes receive it and sometimes don't, my mind goes to life and death and illness. But I think it's a good test for any type of suffering that
Yes.
we're going through, not necessarily physical suffering,
Yes.
but emotional suffering. And I can't magically say this is what it means to each person, but I know what it means to me to be saved from the fire, to be saved in the fire, and to be saved. No, to be saved. See, I have to think
Yeah,
about it.
it's weird.
Yeah. So I may
In,
be,
by, and through.
I may be removed from the fire.
Yeah,
I may need to sit in the fire to be healed, and that fire may
be the thing that heals me.
may be the thing that destroys
Yeah.
me one way or the other. So just a thought.
Yeah, well, and that story is beautiful when you talk about James and you talk about you're right if you're right, if it's God's will, because they say, even if he does not, he said, and that's how I think we should pray. That's what you said. We said, I don't know your plan. I know what you could do, but I know you won't if it's not good for us. Knowing that, this is what we're dealing with. Can it go away? And then be ready to hear the answer. Seems to be how you live with wisdom and holiness. Oh, wait, we got to do our one last thing. Every week we have the handout where I pick a few things from my talk and just try to put them in words like, okay, if holiness means this. The first week said reproducing exclusively with God, behaving as though God can, wants to, and will do anything and everything he says he will, behaving as though God makes only good gifts and the only good gifts. That was week 1 or week 2, because I didn't do one in week 1. Week 3 was attaching our judgment to our love instead of our anger, refusing to continue in a pattern of thinking that leads to bitter envy and selfish ambition, and then behaving as though bitter envy and selfish ambition will follow us wherever we go. So we need to continually draw near to God so that he can change our motives and desires. And then this week, I wrote that if holiness means living in increasing peace, knowing I'm never going to know or always agree with or understand the plan, and the plan is God's will. So why would I think I'm going to know it? He tells me I'm not. Why would I think I'm going to understand it? He tells me I can't. Why would he think I'm going to agree with it? I don't agree with myself all the time. This makes no sense that I would expect it. And therefore, if it doesn't happen, I should not feel disappointed or discouraged. I should have known it was coming. Okay. 2, refusing to limit my concept of good to this life. Because if I'm asking for healing, if this life is hard, God is still good. Because this is only a blip of my existence. And that's one of the reasons also I think Job is in chapter 5, because God comes to Job and what does he say to him? Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? I am moving for your benefit. I promise. Sit down and shut up. That's what it sounds like. Like when your kids are, oh, you know, you're going to grandma's house, but they hate the 8-hour car drive. And you're like, this is the way to get you where you want to be. You want to go to grandma's house. Shut up and sit in the car. That's what Job is to me. And then number 3, walking with God every day. Every day. If every time I get angry, I got to check with him. If every choice that comes up, I need wisdom, why would I for 1 minute try to do anything by myself? I should never. I should always walk with God every day. He's the only one that's going to help me with this. He's the only one that knows the plan, understands the plan, and can guide me through it and hold me in it or save me by it, whatever. So, James, week 4, asking, receiving, in the bag. Next week, We'll talk a little bit more about what God asks for and why and what he does when we say no. Thanks. Job. Did I say James? Oh, okay. Do we have time? We only have 10 minutes. I can break your brains if you want. Let me try to break your brain. Okay. Okay. All right. I don't know why. I was thinking about Job, and I'm not sure I have time to spit this out. I'll try. Job bothers me. Does Job bother anybody else? Anybody happy with Job's life stories? Anybody love it? What's the worst part? I bet you know. What's the word? Do you know what I think the worst part about James is? Job? No? Yeah, I'm asking you. I swear I heard you say it before. How does God fix Job? Does he give him his original wife and children back? He replaces them. Ew, gross. Not okay. Bruh. Loyalty. No, well, maybe she didn't deserve him, but the kids, he gets brand new kids. Either way, the ones that were precious to him, he doesn't get them back. They get replaced. And my modern American Western little mind explodes in anger because that is not what I want. Have you guys ever had a friend or someone who, no, it's not easy. It's not hard stuff. And I've definitely done it. So I'm not saying only other people that it's just no judgment. But have you ever had a friend who lost, let's take a light version. Assume I mean a human. You know what I mean? A dog. They lost their dog. And now they can't get a new dog because of their love for the old dog. They're behaving as if they have a pool of love for dogs and they've already given it away. And to get a new dog, they'd have to take that love away from the dog that they did love to give it to the new dog. They'd have to replace the dog. Okay, interesting. This is telling me something. You know how last week we talked about the difference between human anger and God's anger? I think this is telling me something different about human love and God's love. And I don't know exactly what it is, but the only thing I can say so far is that this is what I told myself when I was having a second child. I loved Coraline so much that I was afraid I wouldn't love my second baby as much as her. Did you guys, is this, no, nobody? No, y'all are smarter than me? Great. Well, and then I told my mom my stupid fear, and she told me, you get new love for everyone you get. There's not a pool of love that you have. And you go, okay, I have 3 people, you each get a third. And then when you get a new person, you have to go, I need some of my love back. I have to give it to a new person. That's not how God's love works. That's how human love works. We have something wrong with our love or our idea of it. I don't know what it is. Do you guys see what I'm saying? Isn't that something? There's a difference between I'm understanding replacing wrong and love wrong because of the way I feel about how God gifts Job at the end. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think it's something to do with the fact of how I view my love. I get this love. You know what I mean? It's like there's no rom-coms about like second marriages because then you like nobody wants to deal with the fact that maybe you replace. It's a human. We have a struggle with that, but that's not what it is. That's not how it works. When you finally get your new dog, you do have a whole other set of love for this dog, and you still love the first one. And it's just anyway, weird thought about what love is and the difference between our love and God's love. If you have any wisdom on that, let me know. Okay, bye.